You're joining the Dr. Business Podcast with Dr. Hollen Meyer, where we talk business sprinkled with a bit of Jesus. Our goal is to help you simplify business, impact more lives, and increase your profitability. By sharing the stories of influential doctors from various specialties, we help you get creative in connecting with your target market, increasing your exposure in the community, and collaborating with local providers so you can reach more people and avoid burnout. Thanks for tuning in, and we're excited to help you navigate success in your doctor business. And now your host, Dr. Hollen Meyer.
All right, let's rock and roll. I'm Dr. Hollen Meyer, and thanks for joining us for another episode. Today we have Dr. Brandon Credeur joining us out of Denver, Colorado. Welcome.
Thank you, Hollen. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Now, Dr. Credeur is one of the most successful functional medicine practitioners and entrepreneurs, and his passion and entrepreneurial acumen and good old-fashioned Southern work ethic has allowed him to build one of the largest, if not the largest, single office cash practices in the history of functional medicine. It's pretty amazing. Through his coaching, consulting, and mentorship, his expertise and wisdom has also been used to train hundreds of functional medicine providers in what he calls the FM success formula. And Dr. Credeur believes functional medicine should be fun, successful, and most of all, impactful. So Brandon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Hollen. Thanks for having me on, and I look forward to connecting with your audience.
You bet. So I've known Brandon for many, many years now, and he was actually one of my very first mentors out of school, or actually even in school, right?
That's right.
Even in school. So Brandon, I know a lot of your story, but so many people don't. Give us kind of the accelerated version of where you started in practice whenever you graduated and how you built one of the most successful functional medicine practices that we have ever heard of.
All right. Awesome. Well, I'm a chiropractor by training. I graduated from Parker College in Dallas, Texas, I think on August 16th. And the very next morning, I moved with my future wife to Denver, Colorado. And I started out, believe it or not, as an independent contractor above what is now a Whole Foods. It was a natural grocery store. And I started out I started out in functional medicine. That's where I started. And I think what's interesting about that experience, one, I was not very good. I was a great clinician, but from a business and sales perspective, a marketing perspective, I wasn't that great. But I had balls because I remember at times coming home to the apartment, and my girlfriend at the time, Heather, who's also a doctor, she would say, "Hey, Brandon, the rent is due, and we don't have the money." So I remember going down into this grocery store and pretending to shop and strike up conversations with people who obviously I thought were health conscious, and to try to sort of corral them to come upstairs and allow me to evaluate them so I could to produce some business. So that's how it started for me. Yeah. From there, we went into a formal practice. We bought a practice and started eking out a living like it was just like the little engine that could, Mm-hmm. And I think we were doing maybe $10,000 a month, helping a lot of people, but it was a very meager and modest practice. Long story short, there were several pivotal moments through connecting with mentors and coaches and people that helped me along, learn the things that I needed to learn. We ultimately built a $7.5 million cash practice in the space of functional medicine. I think one of the highlights from a business perspective, we had a record month of over $1 million collected in one single month. Awesome. But more importantly, we talk about functional medicine the way it should be. It should be fun, successful, and impactful, as you mentioned. Mm-hmm. So more importantly, the impact that we were able to have. Right. We've treated tens of thousands of patients in our clinic, and we've been able to basically develop our business and clinical model and teach other people how to do that in the functional medicine space as well. So now I'm coaching, consulting. I have two practices, one in Denver, one in Seattle, and I'm now sort of out of the practice from a patient care perspective, from a sales perspective. I still have some role in the marketing side of practice and things of that nature. So that's kind of where I am today.
That's awesome. And It's amazing to hear that story. I love hearing that story. From that to now having your marketing, advertising, and even the sales cycle down to literally a science. And that's where I learned so much from you. So I'm super excited to have you on. Now, how did you and your wife create and develop your vision and style of practice? How did y'all develop that? Was it conscious or was it out of necessity, or how did y'all get so awesome at it?
I think it was conscious. I think we had a burning desire to be successful early on. That was always there. We were smart enough to know we didn't know the things we needed to know to be successful in business. And we were looking for consultants. We were looking for mentors and people that could teach us how to build this functional medicine practice. And it was really before functional medicine was really a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was just nobody out there. It was so early. We ended up hiring a business coach. Like she was a former CEO of multiple tech companies in Silicon Valley, and she became our business coach. And one of the things, and I think it was a pivotal moment for us, that she was pushing us to do was to develop what she called our BHAG, which stands for Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. And I remember fighting with Heather at the time. I don't want to go back because all she's going to do is try to get us to figure out this BHAG, right? And we would say, well, it's to help people, and just really mundane things. Or she'd be like, come on, help people? Like, no, that's not a BHAG. And it took several months for us to put the words to what was inside of us, like what was really resonating with our soul. And what came out of that was our BHAG was to change the face of healthcare. Man, once we sort of crystallized that and really knew what we stood for, like that became like the rallying cry for us to be able to do the work necessary to build the system that you refer to go through the grind and do all the hard work and make it through the trials and tribulations to really build up that success.
Right. So with that, I'm sure that was a huge investment, especially early on.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that you hired a CEO, not necessarily a chiropractic coach like a lot of people do. I know y'all were in a very different, trying to really emerge a different field of that. But what would you say is one of the best investments that you've made in business?
It's always been like the return on investment of investing in myself.
Yeah.
Whether it be through education, coaching, mentorship, 100-hour courses, becoming more clinically proficient, all of that. Like, it's unbelievable how much money I've made and how much impact I've been able to deliver by just doing that. I think that's been the signature thing. You know, if I look back on all of the money I spent in school, undergraduate, chiropractic school, all of that stuff was great, but I've spent way more outside of that. And that's really been the thing that's been the fuel.
Yeah. And something unique about you, and I say unique because not everybody does this, is it's not about just showing up to the class, but you're an implementer.
Yeah.
And you implement what you learn and try it and fail and try it and fail. And
there's an interesting story behind that of sort of what was the catalyst for becoming a great implementer. And I'm certainly not perfect. I'll be as lazy as the next person at times, and procrastinate. But we were trying to grow our practice early on, and things were tough. Like, we were living in an apartment, and I think we either just had our first child or Heather was pregnant. And I came home one day from the office, and she had this direct marketing piece from a chiropractic consultant. And he was selling a particular thing. And she said, "Hey, read this. I really think we should do this." And I can't remember what it was. Like, the investment was like $550, like nothing, right? And we just didn't have the money. We were going to have to put it on a credit card. And I remember looking at her and saying, you know what? If we do this, we're going to commit right now, and we're going to do every single thing that he says, and we're not going to alter anything. We're going to do it exactly the way he says it. And the return on investment from that was immense. Like, that actually allowed us to build a multi-million-dollar practice, just that alone. But I think that was the catalyst that really taught me that valuable lesson of compressing time, like learning from others. That's probably something we can talk about, like the idea of compressing time, learning from others, taking from others like that are where you want to be. That really taught me a lot as far as implementation.
Right, 100%. And now, in implementing some of the things that you've implemented over the years, because you're constantly learning, what would you say is one of the most successful failures that you've had, or a struggle that turned out to be a pretty good thing?
I would say far and away, it has been my previous failures in sales. And
Okay.
this is an area for a lot of doctors where they struggle. As we've talked about, I've consulted with hundreds of functional medicine providers and I've talked to probably thousands. And when I evaluate their situation in their practice, they don't have a marketing problem. They don't have a staff problem. At least that's not the biggest thing. It's that they don't communicate effectively. They haven't built a successful admission system,
Hmm.
and they just don't. They don't know how to sell. They don't know how to frame things and create a sandbox, so to speak, so that the patient can actually get out of their own way and say yes to themselves. And there was a point in time where the struggle was real. Like it was bad. It was like beginning to really weigh on my psyche and my confidence. And, we were having kids at the time. I would come home and Heather would be like, "Hey, how'd it go today? I know you had 8 reported findings." I'm like, I went over. And I had every excuse in the book. I was always looking outside of me as to the reasons why. It was never me, never me.
So, what
And
are
I
some of
had,
those reasons why that you would say that you hear all the time from other docs that haven't
oh,
quite learned that skill yet?
yeah, it was people don't value their health. It's not them, it's me. They want their insurance to pay. It wasn't a good fit. Yeah, all of those types of things. The market's bad. I need higher quality patients in front of me, more leads, all of that stuff.
Okay.
And at one point I had a colleague who really became a mentor, and probably that was the turning point, that biggest failure thing that you mentioned, that ultimately became my biggest success. He was kind enough to me to tell me, if these are your stats in sales, you don't know what the hell you're doing in sales. And it was like direct, right between the eyes. And if you would have probably told me that on any other day or at any other part of the day, I'd have gotten pissed off and I would have just rejected it and he would have been an asshole. But at the time, it landed on me just right. I was ready for it. And I let that sink in, and it was the catalyst that allowed me to learn what I needed to learn to really be able to impact my patients, right? Because if you're working in a doctor's office or in a healthcare model where you're working outside of insurance and you have to sell cash, that's your primary job.
Right. Well, and I don't think doctors connect that ever. They don't connect sales. They don't want to sell. It's too icky, and really, like, it's your obligation to learn how to do that so that you can give these folks an opportunity to save their life and say yes to true healthcare.
Yeah, if you can remove yourself from the energy that we all have about the S word, and especially as a healthcare provider, and you could really look at it objectively, you'd be like, duh, well, this is my primary job, because I don't get to solve the clinical case unless I first solve the sales case.
Right. And this podcast is all about business. And we often talk about leads and conversion and retention in classical chiropractic offices or even medical offices and dentist offices. I want to focus on the sales portion with you, because the cool thing about what I've learned from you is a lot of people think of sales as that report of findings in the transaction, right? The exchange of money for service.
Yeah.
Your process happens so many steps before that in positioning the patient. So when it comes to connection, what are some ways or techniques that y'all have been successful in connecting with your target market?
Well, I think what you're talking about is important, in that sales is not a moment as a doctor or healthcare provider where you make your recommendations and ask for the money. You tell them how much it costs. That is not sales. Sales is about creating an entire ecosystem that your prospective patients go through, where they really are, I'm trying to find the right word, where they really are positioned properly to be able to get out of their own way. So in my mind, everything is sales. Like, even before I open my office, everything is sales. I'm already thinking about, how do I want this to work so that when a patient learns about me through my marketing, they're already in a qualification process. That positioning that we use to connect with people is not really selling, but more selecting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that right before I came on this podcast, I had a doctor in Denver. He came to visit the office and we were just sitting chatting. He wanted to learn a little bit about what we did. And he was kind of looking at me like I had three heads to a certain extent when I was talking to them about how our sales or admissions process works. And in that, patients are not coming into our office evaluating us to determine whether or not they want to pay us and get care in the office. We totally turn it around. And at every turn in our process, we are, they know that we're evaluating them. And this is real, it's authentic, it's not window dressing, and we're making the decision if they can be admitted or not.
I feel like so many doctors are constantly trying to prove themselves and their services as valuable, So what are some things that people might be able to implement? How are you able to position them in a way that they are trying to beg to be part of your program and be a patient of yours? And I know so much goes into this question and it's not like a one sentence answer, but if you can give us just a little nugget of something to think about.
Well, here's the nugget that I think starts it off. When a prospective patient calls your office and they're calling to book an appointment with you for a consult or whatever your process is, at that moment, your staff has to take them through a qualification process, a series of 3 to 4 questions that are easily answered that literally, and you train your staff on this to determine whether or not that person gets through the door or they're rejected. Now, we will take about 15, 20, sometimes 25% of the people that call in the office to come to an event or for a consultation, and they will be told, sorry, you're not a good fit for our office. And there's specific language about that. Mm-hmm. The reason why that's important of having this qualification process when they call in, it's because that is the first time they begin to learn that your practice is different. There's a differentiating factor in that they are going to be evaluated. So I think that tool of creating structure on the front end for your staff. So they ask a series of questions for each new patient and they reject some, a small percentage, 15, 20, 25%, and they allow the rest in.
Okay.
So they already come in with the mindset of this is different. I'm being evaluated. It's subtle, but it's very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Now, one of the things that I really learned from you, and y'all are so brilliant at, is gaining exposure in your community. So from your words, how have y'all been successful in your own practice, but also coaching other doctors to do the same and getting the exposure and becoming known in your community and becoming kind of a local celebrity and the go-to doctor? If X, Y, and Z is wrong with you, they know, go see the docs in your office.
I think there are 2 things that come to mind. One, I'm a big fan, and I think it's a must. If you want to be as successful as you want to be in your practice, uber successful, you have to niche out your practice. In other words, if you're holding yourself out as a general practitioner, so to speak, you're never going to be known for anything. So that's one of the ways that we were known. I remember at the height of our practice, we were in a particular area of Denver and we were eating lunch. And we walked into the restaurant and the hostess goes, oh my God, I know you guys. You're those doctors. You're the diabetic doctors. And we were like, holy crap, that's so strange. Because here are 2 chiropractors walking into this restaurant, right? And we're known as the diabetic doctor. One, because that was the niche that we focused on. So we were really able to focus on that. And then the other thing is we did quite a bit of marketing. And I think that's another piece that doctors miss. And sometimes you can't start out doing a lot of marketing, but we did a lot of TV, a lot of radio and things of that nature where we were out in the community. We're building that brand, building that message that we are the reverse your diabetes doctors. And today, right, that's easier than ever.
Yes.
You can have your own YouTube channel. Your website can be knocked out where it's very, very clear. You could have all your social media channels where you can create that celebrity status. You could get a book written now with your content by a ghostwriter, super easy. There's all of these different ways where you can raise your status in the eyes of the marketplace.
Right. And there really is no excuse.
No, oftentimes the excuse is, I don't know how, I don't have the money, those types of things, but that's not an excuse. With hard work and persistence, I just recently, I don't know where this quote came across, of listening to someone, and he said something to the effect that what does how much it cost have anything to do with what you want? And I was like, yeah, right on, right? Right on.
Yeah, but growing up and getting into business, like that mentality, like no, I had no clue about it, but with the personal development and working on myself and working on all the things,
Yeah.
that makes complete sense. A lot of docs in business focus on how much it costs as opposed to the ROI.
Yeah. Well, it's the idea of it takes money to make money. That throwaway line, which is completely not true, because if you can't make money without money, you are not going to make money with money. Like, the skill set of making money is the skill set of making money, whether you have money or not, or probably more powerful to say the consciousness
Right.
of making money is the consciousness of making money, whether you have it or not.
Absolutely. And I know your success programs in what y'all do and teach functional medicine doctors how to do business and how to set up that positioning is what exploded my practice on TV.
Yeah. And that's really what it requires. Like, a lot of doctors, when they are struggling, for example, because we're talking about sales and we're talking about business, and don't get me wrong, like, I'm a heart-centered clinician. Like, the reason I do what I do, as I mentioned earlier, is to change the face of healthcare. But I realize that the only way I can do that is by having a very profitable, thriving practice, as big as I can stand it, and teach other doctors to do the same. But it's really about when a doctor is struggling, for example, with sales, they always want the script or the tool, or how do I handle this objection, or what do I say when they say this? And those are all needed. Those strategies and tools are needed. But what's more needed is a system, because the system is the foundation that allows the tools to work. And you really have to develop the soft skills that make the hard skills really go.
Yeah. And it just takes practice and just doing it.
Yeah. I remember, man, when I was learning how to do this, like, when I set my mind to it and I said, I'm going to master this, I am going to become a sales master. My practice wasn't very busy. So when I had downtime, I would go to Barnes and Noble. There's still one open down the street from me. I don't know how they're still open. It's crazy. But I would literally go there. There's a Starbucks attached. In my off hours in clinic, I would sit and read some training or listen to training. And I had legal pads where I would literally write down my scripts, what I would say when, and more. And I looked like a serial killer. Like, I had yellow legal pads full of writing, because that's how I learn. And I would go so far as to not only write out my responses, like several versions of it, right? Just iterate. So when I was confronted with these situations again, I knew how I was going to handle myself. But I would go so far as to practice the body language that I would have when I was handling an objection, the emotional state I would be in, my eye contact, all of that stuff was practiced and rehearsed. And next thing you know, it just seeps into your DNA.
That is brilliant. And for the listeners listening into this, take note on this and literally start to implement a couple of these things, because what he's saying sounds like, okay, yeah, but literally, like, take it to heart, put it in your headspace, and start doing these things. It will transform how you practice. It will transform your business, and it'll transform how you handle these objections that you feel so defeated with too.
Yeah. It's super interesting. It's I would go so deep, like it was nonstop, right? Because here's the thing, most of the doctors that are listening to this, they're already smart enough.
Yeah.
They don't need to be any smarter. They don't need to take any more courses. You should, right? But they don't need any more letters behind their name. They need to invest their time and energy and resources into learning sales. I mean, I just immersed myself in it. In the shower in the morning, I would be going through it in my head on my drive to work. And I remember sometimes I'd drive in the practice, like with this pit in my stomach, because I knew I had to do that sales thing. And before I got really good, it was a struggle, right?
Yeah. It reminds me of Grant Cardone's, like, be obsessed or be average.
Oh yeah, is that what he says?
It is. He has a book written, but
Yeah.
with that title, but it kind of reminds me of that. Like, you're kind of obsessed with this. Like, you love it and you had to learn it. Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit on collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
So have you had much opportunity, and I know you have, and you've created opportunity for other people too, to collaborate with other doctors, whether it's in your specialty or outside of your specialty, healthcare professionals, and how has that served your practice and your business and other docs?
Well, I think it's invaluable. One, all of my VIP clients, they're all bright, right? So when I'm consulting with them and they're in the group creating this culture, they always come up with amazing ideas. Like they'll iterate on what we've taught them. Like, oh, wow, that's brilliant. So our process has changed over the years. Best practice have been refined and polished. And a lot of that is because of the collaboration with my clients and my colleagues. The other thing comes to mind, I just did a really cool virtual summit called the Functional Medicine Sales Training Virtual Summit. I did, I think, 50 interviews with experts, not just in healthcare, but sales and communication experts. And I learned so much. I felt guilty that I was the host of this sales training virtual summit, and I'm sitting there writing notes, and I have all of this content that I can go back and study and pull little nuggets from each of them. And like, oh boy, that cool tool will go right in my process right here and really tune it up a little bit.
I do the same thing with this podcast.
Yeah. It's kind of self-serving in a way, but it's part of the fuel of that makes you keep doing it. Well, I think that question is really interesting because I think a lot of doctors feel like they're on an island. Yeah. They feel like they're alone, that no one's out there wanting to help them, that other people are not going through this very same thing that they're going through. And what I found is getting out of your space and connecting with your colleagues is very, very valuable. And the other thing that I found, especially through this virtual summit, is how many people that are uber successful are willing to give back. They're willing to share. They're willing to help. They want to help others come up, because they can still remember where they were when they were coming up, wishing that they had a mentor or trying to give back because someone mentored them.
Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned the virtual sales summit that you had, which was awesome. I was able to listen in on that too. You have another live event coming up. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm super proud of this event, and it's been percolating for a long time. Like, if you're in the functional medicine space, or really if you're just in the doctor space, you probably see a lot of events, weekend events, seminars, et cetera, that revolve around clinical excellence. They revolve around marketing excellence, or train your staff, or XYZ. All of that stuff is fantastic. But as I said earlier, if you can't sell the service, none of that other stuff matters. So I've been wanting to plant my flag for a long time now and hold a summit, basically, where we train doctors how to sell, where we bring the top people in the field to come and train doctors how to build a system, how to communicate, how to listen, all of these amazing sales and communication tools. So we developed something called Sales Mastery Weekend. It is April 17th through the 19th in San Antonio, Texas. And I'm super excited. It's not 3 full days. It's 2 full days, half Friday, all day Saturday, and a half a day on Sunday. We have some amazing people there. Sean Callaghy is going to be there, one of the best sales trainers and communicators I've ever seen. Peter Osborne's there, Dr. Matthew Loop, Ryan Rieger from the UK, who's got 8 thriving practices in England.
Yeah.
Who else? Brian Flanagan, who trained directly under Zig Ziglar. I mean, this guy is an amazing sales trainer and communicator, a special human being. I think he's actually out in Dallas. But he's a hoot, man. He is super funny, very entertaining. Who else is there? Noah St. John, a lot of really cool people that are at the top of their game.
Awesome. People watching this on YouTube can really see your excitement. The folks listening to the podcast, I wish you could see his excitement when he's talking about this. That's awesome. Now, is this event specific for functional medicine practitioners, or any doctor that does any kind of doctoring could benefit?
Yeah. Well, if they check it out, they will see that it's marketed specifically for functional medicine practitioners, just because that's the space that we're in. But the tools that we're going to be teaching and everyone's going to be teaching can be used by any healthcare provider that has to communicate and sell their services and valuable life-saving products outside of insurance, right? So if you're in healthcare and you're working in a cash model and you're thinking to yourself, man, if I was a better salesperson, and you kind of have to get comfortable with that term. Yeah. My life would be better, my quality of life would be better, my family, my kids, etc. But the amount of impact you could have in your community would be exponential, right?
Absolutely.
And I think about this all the time. and you've probably experienced this as well, and we still experience it today, like fixing one person's health, like taking someone who's chronically ill and allowing them to return to health. The tentacles of that are so far reaching, like they become a different person.
Yeah.
You know, how does that impact their relationship with their loved one, their kids, their grandkids, their brothers and sisters, their coworkers? Like, you have no idea how being more effective at sales changes the world.
Absolutely. Yes. And I know the caliber of folks that I know that are going, you definitely want to check out this seminar, because just in the space of collaboration and being around these amazing people and just being able to discuss with your peers how to implement this in your practice is going to be awesome. So check that out. I'll be sure to put that link in the show notes as well. Now, Brandon, I have one more thing before I let you go.
Okay.
It's the fire rapid round. Are you ready for this?
I think so.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you some questions, and then you'll quickly answer me with some short answers, okay?
All right.
All right, ready? Here we go. In hindsight, what should be the 2 top areas of focus in practice or in business?
That's easy. Finding the great niche and being a better communicator, salesperson.
Love it. What is the best advice that you have ever received?
I had a mentor coach tell me I needed to go home that next Monday after a Sunday session. I needed to buy 2 Mercedes-Benz.
Okay, these are supposed to be quick, but I'm going to ask a little bit more about that one.
It was a pivotal, believe it or not, it was a very pivotal moment where we were in a tough spot in our practice. We were in a tough spot financially. What had happened was we had this huge growth in our practice, and we were taking in a lot of money, and we didn't quite understand how to manage the taxes. So we were all kind of cattywampus with our taxes and our cash flow and all that stuff. And he was looking at our numbers and our growth, and I don't know why, but he asked what type of cars we were driving. And I'm not going to tell you what type of cars we were driving, but he looked at me like, are you effing serious right now? Like, a guy as smart as you, and Heather was with me, is, people that are as smart as you, as well-purposed and passionate as you guys are, you're driving those cars. He's like, here's my recommendation, and you need to go do this on Monday. You need to go to the Mercedes dealership, and you're going to buy a Mercedes, and you're going to buy your wife a Mercedes. And we did that the first part of the week when we went back, and we leased 2 brand new Mercedes. And it was, the idea there is sort of getting into a resonance and a vibration of success, right? And it really worked. It was not that it's going to work for everyone, but it was really good advice for us.
That's awesome. All right. What is one thing that you see consistently in every successful business owner?
Passion, and like this attitude, because of that passion, that mission, that they don't stop. There's no give up. They're prepared to do whatever it takes to make their business successful.
Awesome. And then last question, this is about giving back as well. What is one of the best resources that you've utilized in business that you would recommend for our listeners?
This is the first thing that pops into my head. It may be an odd answer. It's a patient financing tool that I have nothing to do with. Nothing at all. It's Enhanced Patient Finance, and their tool, that tool for me has been a lifesaver for not only my business but my patients, because people would look at our fees and say, wow, those case fees are high, but our fees are structured such that it makes our business run smoothly. And a lot of times patients, over 90% of the time, they use those tools to access the life-saving care that we give.
Right. That's awesome. And that's a new one that has never been mentioned on this show. So thank you so much for that. Now, Brandon, before I let you go, how can folks get a hold of you?
You can check me out at thefmshift.com. That's THEFM as in functional medicine, shift.com. You can email me at support@thefmshift.com. I also have a really cool private Facebook group called FM Sales Masters. That is fun. I'm like in that group, I'm literally training doctors how to sell. Like it's a cool collaboration with doctors who are trying to learn. So you can check me out there and ask to be in that group as well. So FM Sales Masters on Facebook.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and all your knowledge and value that you shared with us. Thanks, Brandon, for everything.
Thanks, Hollen. Appreciate it.
You bet. And for our listeners, be sure to bust out your notes, listen to this again, and share this with a colleague as well. Don't forget to register for his event coming up on April 17th and 18th. Is that right?
Yeah, 17th through the 19th.
Yes, perfect. In San Antonio, Texas, people are coming from all over the country and probably other countries too. So be sure to check that out. And also, thanks for listening in and stay classy, folks.